Irashaimase! Hello and welcome to Fitaurus Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fitaurus. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday. And on the menu for this Saturday, we have Silpheed Lost Planet, the 2000 PlayStation 2 follow-up to Game Arts 1993 Sega CD classic. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. As we start the game, we're taken to a code name entry screen. Here you would normally put your name, like Fitaurus in my case, but today I'm going with the codename Glor, and we'll explain why in just one moment. After you enter your name, there are some cutscenes explaining the story of the title itself. Basically an interesting one of humanity encountering these aliens and where the force is being sent to intercept them, because they're obviously hostile. Explaining what the code Glor does for us, it gives us all the weapons available right from the start of the game. Normally there's only the Vulcan and the V-Vulcan available at the very start of Silpheed Lost Planet, but with that code entered in, we can choose from all 9 of the weapons that are in the game. Normally, well, in any case, there really are just 3 weapons that you will need throughout the course of the run to go and complete a game of Silpheed Lost Planet. But we'll experiment with some of the other weapons just so we can see what they do. So you get to pick one for your left side of your ship as well as your right side of your ship. And you can fire them independently. But most of the time you would just be using the auto fire, which fires both. So we'll go with the Starbow for our left side. And since the beginning of the game, let's go with Plasma Ball. So for those of you who are familiar with Silpheed on the Sega CD or have watched my video, this one is a direct sequel to it. It takes place 31 years after the events of Silpheed. Fast forward to that time and we're trying to defend Earth's 11th settled planet, Solant, from these mysterious alien invaders. So in that time, apparently the Planetary Space Force hasn't made huge advancements in spacefaring technology, or at least starfighter technology. We're still flying SA-77 Silpheeds, but an updated version, the Type J. So it's nice to see, even in a world like Silpheed, where we have sci-fi events present, that when they have a good design and they know it, they stick with it. One thing to note, you might be noticing the score multipliers on enemies when the enemies are destroyed. That's based on your distance to the enemies at the time of their destruction. The closer you are, the higher the multiplier, all the way up to times 16. So one new feature to Silpheed Lost Planet is at several points throughout the course of the stage there'll be refuel points, where it's possible for us to change our weapon loadout, as well as get some shields back. Now, unlike a lot of shoot-em-ups, Silpheed has a life bar, essentially. It's basically a shield bar where we have 10 units of shield, so we can basically take 10 hits before we die. Then once we die, it's game over, and the way Silpheed handles it, it employs a start from the beginning of the stage form of continuing. And there also are finite continues. The game doesn't really have much in the way of difficulty settings. We're able to set it from normal or hard and change our shield from the default 10 to 5, so we can make things significantly harder on ourselves if we really want to. Right now we are just playing with the default settings. The game does start out easy, but by the midpoint of the 6 stages, the difficulty does ramp up significantly. Also, another change from the original, or I guess not technically the original, but Silpheed for the Sega CD, there are mini-bosses, or maybe mid-bosses might be a better way to refer to them, peppered throughout the course of this game. So whereas in Silpheed for the Sega CD we would play through a stage and encounter one boss and maybe a couple large enemies throughout the course of it. There are multiple bosses in most stages of Silpheed Lost Planet. Here we are at the final boss of Stage 1. There are blue shots that enemies fire that can be destroyed, and just like everything else within the game, those blue shots can be destroyed for points as well. So if you're looking for high points, you want to go and play close and dangerous. And we seem to be doing alright with 7-beam and the Thunderbolt against this particular boss. We did take some shots, and I wasn't close enough to get any additional multiplier for him when he was destroyed. That's a little bit of a disappointment. But as you complete the stage, you get your results, how many of each different multiplier you achieved. Now, and in the normal course of a game, as you progress, you unlock additional weapons, and that's more or less based on your score, but just as long as you're destroying most of the weapon or most of the enemies in an efficient way, you'll be unlocking about the same weapons every time.
Begin mounting your weapons now.
Now that we've seen some of the more standard weapons, let's go and take, or rather not standard, some of the more powerful weapons that the game has to offer. In theory, let's check out the default weapons that you would be using in the course of a normal playthrough. So here we've gone double optic laser. Two short bursts of lasers that deal heavy damage to the enemies that we're fighting. As we progress through these clouds, we come to our first boss of Stage 2, Large Craft of Protein, Attack and Destroy. Just a bigger disc of those smaller ones that we've been fighting to this point. Now, one thing to note, unlike the original, once again, not the original, unlike Silpheed for the Sega CD, we don't have the option of taking damage past the end of our shields. If we lose our 10th shield point, it's game over at that time. Whereas in the Sega CD Silpheed, you could take damage an additional 2 times past that point, one damaging your weapon systems and one damaging your engine systems. It's a little sad that that's gone, but I can accept the way that things are now. Just so that you know, we actually have a double bar of health points or shield points. So after the first 5 are gone, then you'll have another row of 5. And those will start to increase color to red, indicating how critical your situation is. Now, like the Sega CD version, this Silpheed uses a similar technique of us flying over a 3D generated landscape, and in this case we're flying over the destroyed planet of Celant. The enemy forces were able to land on the planet, and in a matter of minutes the planet was engulfed with life, and well, here we are as starfighters on a rescue mission to find any survivors. The planetary governments have, although taken several days to declare such, have declared the aliens as a hostile force and are sending in a bombardment of basically super interplanetary missiles with the intent of destroying the planet and all of the aliens thereon. Basically giving up on the whole civilian population. But as you can see from the damage in the city itself, there probably aren't any survivors at this point. So, talking about some of the plus flavors that I feel Silpheed Lost Planet has. Well, for one thing, there's a definitely nostalgia for those who are fans of the franchise. Though it's only been for a couple games, for me there's nothing greater than getting in the cockpit of the SA-77 Silpheed. From the moment that I went and played the Sega CD Silpheed, I've been enchanted with the series and its promise of a sci-fi future with your wingmen chattering in the background as you're flying to go and defeat an alien invasion or a terrorist organization. That's great. The nostalgia and the homage that's present here, as you do get some lines that were used in the previous titles, in this one as well, is just great. There's also the ability to configure your weapons to what you like or what would be useful to the situation. I love those systems in shoot-em-ups, and I feel that not enough of them employ customizable weapon setups. There's also the music as well. Being a fan of the series, there are themes that are reminiscent of the music from the previous title, and that does a lot to set the mood for the game. Some minus flavors that we have, unfortunately, I feel that the game itself has poor pacing, where at times things just feel slow or, outright dull. There'll be periods of time where there's no enemies on screen and it's not even obvious if anything is loading. So here, with our new upload, or our new loadout, we've stuck with the optical laser on the right side, but we went with the Napalm Bomb on the right side. The Napalm Bomb fires a total of 6 bombs in 3 directions from the ship. 2 behind, and then 4 at angles in front at both 45s. Depending on the situation, it's great for taking out certain bosses, including this one that we're coming up against. So back to the weapons. Even though I love the weapon customization that the game presents and has available, one problem with that weapon customization is the simple fact that most of those weapons just aren't useful, especially by the time you've gotten them. There's really not much reason to use them at all. The game was developed by Game Arts, but it was also developed in conjunction with the shoot-'em-up masters at Treasure. So while some of their handiwork can definitely be seen and felt in the way that the game progresses, considering some of the masterpieces that Treasure has crafted, it feels like it's a little bit of wasted potential with the title Silpheed Lost Planet. It's still a really enjoyable game, and one that I do like to come back to from time to time, but it doesn't have the staying power of such great shoot-'em-ups like Radiant Silvergun and Ikaruga. On a quick note, the US release did have some improvements made to it over the Japanese release. The US version removed some slowdown that was present throughout the course of the game and added analog control for smoother playthrough. We find ourselves at the final boss for Stage 2. Flying over an awesome lava field. It's a little bit polygony though. So one fun thing about this battle is as this enemy flies backwards, occasionally it does hit some stalactite, stalagmite pillars in this lava cavern we're in, sending rocks our direction, but also presumably damaging it as well. And with that explosion, Stage 2 complete. So for a fan of the series like myself with nostalgia for Silpheed, I could definitely recommend playing this title if you haven't. But if you're not looking for that nostalgia and you're not looking to play all the games, all the shoot 'em ups out there that you can, then maybe Silpheed Lost Planet might be one that can be passed over for other better vertical scrolling shoot 'em ups that are available for the PlayStation 2, and there are many. Still, as I said, it is a favorite of mine, even if that's largely based on nostalgia. Alright, that should wrap it up for this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, I want to thank you so much for coming out and joining me, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.